Hey, being at work listeners, welcome back to another episode. This is your host, Andrea Butcher. Man, I love this show and I love this conversation today. Oh gosh, you know how when you sit down with those like-minded friends that have big ideas, you can go all over the place and you can jump back and forth and you can dream and then you can dive in and then you can riff off of each other. That's what this conversation feels like for me today because our guest is not only a collaborator and a referral partner that I have huge respect for, but she's also a friend, and I adore her spirit, and I love what she's creating. And I'm so grateful to support the launch of her new podcast, Workplace Revolution, Operationalizing a People First Strategy. Andrea Brummett is a master at doing just that. And she's going to unpack those words today, people first. You're going to hear a lot. And you're going to no doubt get some new ideas for leading in your business with a real focus on people first. But let me tell you a little bit about Andrea. She's the CEO at Ready HR and the Pabulum Group. But what you really need to know about her is how she works with organizations and leaders to ensure that they're letting their people power their strategy, not the other way around. So she's deconstructing the way we approach strategic planning and challenging people processes, many of which were constructed during the Industrial Revolution and no longer make sense for business today. So, what would happen if we started with a different structure and built from that place? So that's what we're going to explore through this conversation. Check it out. Hi, Andrea. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrea.
AB squared.
AB squared back at it again.
Congratulations on your new podcast.
Thank you. It is really cool. It is it's many things coalescing at once, and I'm really, really excited about it. Excited to be here today too.
It is. It feels like, as you've described it to me, it feels like it is such a good time to bring together all the experiences you've had because you've been consulting for a long time. You have tons of experiences. What a great forum to share all of that.
Yeah, I feel like there is a little bit of a uniqueness to where I am in my life and how long I've been in consulting. And then there are some other parts of that too that I think for people that are in their mid 40s to I don't know, whatever, mid 50s, there is a period of life that you and then you get to another one, but a period of life that you become reflective of how and really comfortable with not knowing what you don't know. So like that sinking into, oh yeah, you get to this part of life and you go like, it just never stops. The new knowing and the evolution of who we are and you become familiar with the cycles of life. And so I started my consulting practice when I was 24. I didn't have kids until I was 39. And so I'm at this like mid-career point, still new parent, and have 20 years of this consulting experience to now start to really process through what 20 years of consulting experience, especially with leaders, especially with small businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs and startups kind of starting from fresh, not inheriting big corporate structures, but trying to figure it out from seed, and to be able to dig into that and share those experiences. And I've been in relationship with people like you, right, who have been doing this for a long time too. And so, and we talk about those things and we connect on those things and we share. And so there's a lot of really good experience that is mine, that is others, that ultimately coalesces into this, to what has been sitting inside of me and processing for a really long time. And it feels really good to give it a voice.
So good. Well, and I love the title of your show, which really represents that workplace revolution because you are really trying to drive change and challenging just the stupidity of a lot of the processes, the outdated nature of so much of the stuff that we do. Like, and you say operationalizing a people first strategy. So yeah, I'm eager for you to bring that to life today for our listeners who no doubt can relate. Cause I mean, we hear those words a lot, like people first. And yet a lot of the people strategies are not people first.
Not even a little bit. I don't know that I'll be able to totally recall what the quote was, but it was a Simon Sinek Instagram post. And it was just a straight up call out. If you are willing to reduce your workforce before you're willing to restructure your revenue, then don't call yourself a people first organization. And it's the concept of kind of the gaslighting, the marketing, the misleading. We use the people first because that makes people feel good. And we want people to believe that, but we're not doing the things that are required to genuinely be people first. And we could then say, well, let's ask a deeper question. Is people first the most effective way to go, right? Why would we want that? Do we want it because we want people to believe that we want to be in that kind of relationship with them? Or do we want it because we believe genuinely that that's going to get us to where we want to go? And I think that that is one of the first questions that I would ask people to reflect on if you're in that position. I deeply believe that the answer is 100%. It's the right thing for business. I think that's where we need to start, but you've got to really do the tough work to get there. It's not, there's nothing easy about it. It's harder to me than the actual strategic planning of building a business. I think it's harder to me than having an idea that you, or a product that you can physically create, an idea that you can really bring to life. Human to human relation, being in good shape with yourself, good enough shape that you can be in good shape with others, is the most difficult journey that I think any of us go on in all of our lives. And so the way that we then translate that to the way that it shows up in the way we run businesses is really important.
Yeah, and so many business leaders are just doing what they know, doing what's been modeled to them, doing what a lot of the traditional literature tells them to do. So this is an important conversation. And what I love about the work that you're doing is you're really breaking it down, which is why you're saying operationalizing it. I know you have these 10 pillars that you're going to be focusing on your show. And so how do I do it? If yes, I really want to be people focused. Like, where do I start as a business leader?
Yeah, and you're referencing the 10 pillars. I think the first thing I want to say is that there's nothing like, all I've done is taken concepts that we're already talking about from leadership development, from people development, great people skills, and we've reordered them for the sake of what I believe would ignite businesses on fire. And so if I boil it down, where you start is with yourself as the leader. And by the way, this is not a leader only conversation, it's also an employee conversation. So there's really two verticals to this because we don't give ourselves as employees enough credit for the control that we have over the environments that we're in. So same thing, it's going to start with you. What are you willing to put up with? What are you going to seek? What boundaries are you going to have around that relationship that you have with an employer? What are you going to expect? And the more of us that show up expecting safe, capable, encouraging leaders, the more safe, encouraging, capable leaders will be available. But in that starting with you, it starts at pillar number one, psychological safety. And we're drawing on a lot of structures that would be really common. And I think the one that visually makes the most sense to use here is just Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It simplifies it. We all know it, right? We can remember the triangle. And when we're talking about psychological safety from an organizational perspective, we're kind of rising to the top of that triangle. And what I'm saying there is that all of those other things that we spend our time on, from an organizational people operations perspective, that's not getting it done. The fact that you're paying people, we're not doing kudos. Benefits, nope, no kudos. One-on-ones, place for people to connect with their manager to be able to tell you about themselves, no kudos. It's all at the bottom of the pyramid. What I'm asking you to do is get to the point that we are really invulnerable human to human connection. Our masks are off, our walls are down. We're willing to show up to our workplaces just as we are. And that's the psychological safety work. When I say that to you in the context of what we know about developing organizations, feels daunting. There are very few of us that are really, really, really there. And I'm a big fan of your podcast, a listener. I know that there's been a lot of conversation about that psychological safety, emotional intelligence, taking your masks off, kicking the wall down. Not like it's not on a button. You don't let it go down and then let it go back up. It's dismantling the wall and leaving it dismantled and down, walking through that space and holding new open space in those relationships. And it's a lot of work to just get to step number one.
Well, and I think that's the reason a lot of leaders don't do it. It's like, "Oh, okay, I was looking for something outside of me to do."
But we also know they spend all of their time. If I just keep doing all of these things, this is just it's gonna come, right? It's
The
gonna come.
activity,
Yes.
the activity, the hard work. Yeah. Versus, like, looking in the mirror and reflecting on, "What part am I playing here, and what do I want?" It's listening to you, it's like it's leading by design rather than leading by default. I think so many leaders are just reacting every day to whatever it is that's in front of them versus really being intentional about what they're creating.
When you say that, it brings up for me, and not to get too woo woo about it, but I think the thing that leaders have in common is that we have we're really comfortable being uncomfortable. We have an immense capacity for discomfort. And so we talk about that in language like risk. What's your risk tolerance? What's your conflict tolerance? So those are like common ways that we, from a business perspective, kind of engage in these conversations. But what's behind, to me, in this work, like what's behind that? What gets us to the point that we have a high degree of tolerance for discomfort, or we're really comfortable being uncomfortable? And we tell each other that's the advice we give each other: get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Lean into that discomfort. And it's really good advice because that's where we find change. That's where in discomfort, we find the places that we need to spend time. So it's good advice. But I think my capacity, at least I can speak from my own experience, comes from the place of a little person having to have capacity for being uncomfortable. That's my work as a leader, to recognize that I owe it to myself and I owe it to the people that I'm going to be in relationship with, that are going to count on me to move an organization, which means to hold their livelihood in my hands and have a mutual responsibility with them for it. I go do that work, that I can recognize, yes, I have a high level. I'm super comfortable being uncomfortable. I have a really high risk tolerance, and that's a trauma response. And I owe myself and everyone around me the work of digging in, so that I'm not recreating that situation for the people around me. That's a me thing, right? But I also think it is a rare leader that I run into that origin story doesn't somehow start there.
Ah, it's so good. So it starts with self. It starts with self. And that's work that never ends.
Never. There is no destination.
Right. Leadership development is self-development. We're never gonna check the box on that work.
Right. We're never done.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm continually reflecting on the part that I play. Yeah. On what's going on within me. I'm attending to my influence.
And then what kind of begins to connect one and two is, I'm also open to and relying upon learning about how I impact others. I'm building my awareness of myself with the people around me. Ultimately, I'm gonna, we're probably gonna put that in the emotional intelligence box. How do I see others? How do I empathize with others? How do other people experience me? And how do I experience other people? And what are my opportunities for development there? So psychological safety, one, how can I relate to myself? How can I create safety within myself? Emotional intelligence, two, how do I create safety in relationship with others?
Well, and again, going back to the relationship I have with myself clearly is going to impact that. I mean, it's the old, like, you're only gonna love others as much as you love yourself. I mean, it's got to start there with you.
Yes, and I think that the dirty little secret there is, can I be in good relationship with others if I don't love myself? You can with the mask, right? So we can manufacture surface relationships that appear to be good, but those don't survive tragedy. Those don't survive challenge. They don't have an ability to be agile. They don't have an ability to work through things that aren't in the control of what the mask requires, I guess is the way that I would put it.
And there's surface. So this it's not gonna be fulfilling.
In any way.
Yeah, no connection or lack of connection for certain.
And so then the next word that comes up for me there is then we can't authentically have a trusting relationship in that place. Because I'm eventually going to get to the point that I don't know I can't predict who you are or what you're going to do or whether I'm safe because we'll have a situation that's out of control at some point in time or out of someone's control at some point in time. And the only way to be able to make it to the other side of that is to be able to do that with vulnerability, showing weakness, showing our underbelly, being able to go through it with people with a sense of, I don't know everything, but we're going to lean on each other in the integrity that we know that we can lean on each other. The mutual knowing that happens when we're in deep relationship with one another.
And the efficiency that comes from those kinds of relationships, because I will just say the thing. We're not pretending.
Right. And what do people do? Everyone rises to their self, not to what do they need from me? Who do I need to be? How do I have to show up in this situation? I just rise up to be my best self in those scenarios. And when we're working with each other in that way and our roots are connected, there are things happening that aren't just what's going on in the room and what I can see. There's a trusting and a knowing about your ecosystem that it's firing, it's working. I don't have to be present to know that it's all working because I know that the people around me, that we're working in system.
And I can feel that, and that creates culture. I mean, so that work on myself, that intentionality in creating safety in the relationships that I have, I mean, that is the foundation for a people first culture.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's people first. We didn't talk about the product you were creating. We didn't talk about your purpose and your values. We're not talking about your systems or your profitability. That's people first.
So what I'm taking away from our conversation so far is that really doing the work on yourself is where it starts. And then the relationship you have with others is really critical. It's almost like the space you have within yourself and then the space you have with others, the relational aspects, the people work, mission critical for the foundation. Two, the systems and processes we put in place. It's almost like they create a culture on which the processes and systems can really live.
Yeah, which is a phenomenal summary because it kind of breaks the 10 pillars almost into two parts in that we're really working on the relationship side and probably steps 1 through 3. 4 is probably the bridge for 1 through 3 through 2, 5 through 10. 5 through 10 really being those systems. It's the foundations on which we have up to this point built business practices. It's the things that are about the business. And 4 being a really important bridge because that is purpose and values. That is that, to be able to connect the systems, to be able to connect our expectations, to be able to get to the point that we are actually operating with mutual outcomes, which is so critical to this system. We have to have shared purpose and values. And I love Gen Z's commitment to that, like the way that they're coming into the workforce on the heels of Gen Y. An organization's commitment to purpose and values is no longer optional. Again, I think I say this a lot. You may be an essential workforce. Maybe there's something about your business that's essential to your community. And so you have some things that you can get away with that others can't, or you're essential in the way of healthcare. And those cultures tend to lag a little bit because they don't suffer from needing to be as attractive as others. I hope leaders still make meaningful and difficult decisions about relationships in those places anyway. But being able to build that bridge of we share purpose, we're going in the same direction, and we're doing it with hearts kind of all pointed in the same direction, or open in the same direction, is so invaluably critical. And a lot of times it's not organizations have those. Organizations have the purpose and values. The fall down is on communicating them. So that's why we spend so much time in doing the work of being able to verbalize them, being able to write them down, really being purposeful about what they are, and how we then connect them is in how we communicate them. We bring them up all the time. We went through phases where people wrote them on the wall, and people still do, and that's okay. It's not enough, but it's okay. Like, how do we keep those where we're all sharing them all the time? It's really important. It's critically important.
It's alignment, isn't it? I mean, you've used the word shared a few times, and I think that's the key. It's like the glue that binds, that again flows through all of our systems and processes. And just to align on, I want to make sure we're thinking about this in the same way. So you said 4 is the bridge. It's the shared purpose and values that then allows for all of our talent acquisition, our onboarding, our talent management, our rewards systems and processes, our talent development activities, right? It's the shared values and purpose are woven through those.
Absolutely. I would take it just a couple of steps further, because there are a lot of business leaders that have a hard time listening to what we're talking about, because we never get to the point where we're talking about lean systems, organizational system design, agile workforces, Six Sigma, right? Like, get to the part where we're doing the things that we're doing. And these are also really critical to those things. If I do the people work first, I think about how often people struggle. Like, we put those systems in place because hopefully it gives mechanism to people that makes people more predictable. But if we do the work with the people first, whereby we've created systemic cultures, right, where we count on each other in a way that I don't have to manipulate you to show up. You're coming here willingly, gladly, and totally engaged. Then think about what happens when we're in Six Sigma or lean or agile thinking, and we now have the predictability of our people in it, not the systems controlling the people, but the people actually generating the systems. And so that's why I say, like, at the beginning of this, it's inverting that relationship where we really are putting the horse where the horse belongs, and that's in front of the cart, not the horse behind the cart. The horse is designed to pull. So let's focus on the health of the horse, and then we start to build the structure and architecture of the cart.
Yeah, and that is what you mean by people first strategy. The people are powering the strategy. You're not trying to use the strategy to power the people. And, oh my god, I freaking love this because nobody wants to be manipulated in that way, and that's what it feels like. Don't you tell me what to do. In what you're describing, it's like, no, I'm bought in. I'm part of it. So of course I am engaging in a way that feels like that. That feels like I'm empowered.
Not to be a total dork, but that just gave me goosebumps. So that's how much I'm involved. That's how deeply I'm committed to the work. But that's exactly right. And part of the reason why this feels like the right time to do this work is that people are starting to have a voice. We hear more often, and we've got kind of shared language around it. Quiet quitting. There were many of these movements that, for whatever reason, popped up during COVID. I think obvious to me why they popped up at that time, that have stuck around, that continue to be frustrations for people and leaders, but people are starting to express in a way that we can hear and listen, these frustrations about, it just isn't what I was sold. And I thought I was coming into something completely different. What you told me is not how this is winding up. And I don't think it's because I don't think leaders are doing it on purpose. I don't think marketing teams are doing it on purpose. I think you're rallying around what you really want. You are setting an intention by verbalizing that that's what you want out of your culture, out of your people, out of your organization. But you can't start at step 8 and expect that with a group that you've not coalesced around the same message, and that you don't hold the same values and purpose and alignment, that somehow we're going to magically arrive at the same place. I have a client who unapologetically says that their purpose, the mission, the reason they exist is to make money. I don't necessarily connect to that, but that's okay because if you build a strong culture around a bunch of people whose purpose, mission, and value is to make money, then you will create an organization that makes money, full of people who value making money. And my point being that, like, I think a lot of us will viscerally go like, "Ooh, well, that's not that doesn't feel good." Well, but it does to a whole bunch of people, right? And you want to go find those people.
And it's honest.
Correct.
That's the key. Is I mean, because I think about a CEO I worked with several years ago who espoused a set of values that he did not model, and no one trusted him. Like, you can sniff out that shit a mile away.
A mile away.
Yeah, so just know who you are and be that. Which again goes back to the, like, you gotta do the work. You gotta know who you are in order to be that. You gotta know what you stand for in order to espouse it.
100%. And number 9 in the pillars, we're jumping all over the place and it doesn't matter because it's too many to remember.
I'm not surprised. That's kind of how we roll.
I know. But number 9 is that integrated impact shaping sustainability. And so when you hear me having these conversations about community and our impact on the community, that can feel really like big. It can feel like, what meaning does that have? But when you're a leader who's having this kind of impact that you espouse to values that you don't uphold, you are impacting the totality of your community. You're creating damage at an individual level. Those individuals go home, they talk about it with their spouse, their families. Their spouse, their families go out and they talk about that with their communities. And you're doing that on a scale of multiple people. You are having an impact on your community, whether you like it or not. It's, you and I talk about this in the talent world all the time, but that's that word of mouth. Like, you really want to protect the integrity of the way you operate. That's the free advertising of like, I love being here and this is why. And this is the kind of person that would also love being here. Or I hated being there and this is why, because they're full of shit and I never felt safe. And everything was about, somebody else getting to the top. And I felt like I just had boots on my shoulders or on my back at all points in time. Didn't trust my manager because my manager doesn't feel safe either. It becomes an epidemic in those organizations.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so I know we're jumping around a bit. I wanna kinda bring it back to the pillars because there's a couple of gaps for me that I'm hoping you can fill in. So I totally get 1 and 2 being about the work of me and the relationships I have with others and the influence that I have. I think of 1 and 2 as like a drop of water hitting a still pond and rippling out, right? I've got to start with what kind of ripples am I creating? And then you said 4 is really the bridge to 5 through 10 being the systems. So what about 3? Did we miss 3 somewhere in there?
We did not. We've kind of talked about it. It's specifically the power of inclusive leadership. So, United We Lead, the power of inclusive leadership, really understanding what it means to, and this is a tough one. We're in a tough conversational space about this. Inclusivity is included in a conversation, in the conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusivity, DEI, and then it's evolved to belonging, work, and we know the debate that we're having in that space. Inclusivity is, well, I would argue none of those are optional. Inclusivity is specifically not optional because it is the way in which we hold the entirety of the space of what it means to lead. And to lead does not just mean you're at the front of the pack, right? In any way, I think we can challenge that perspective. The only way that you end up being in a position of leadership is because there are those that are comfortable following. That you can demand it, and that's not real leadership, or you can live it, and people come along with you. But that's them giving you that privilege. You don't get to just demand, well, not effectively demand that I'm a leader. People create leaders. Leaders don't create themselves. Well, I mean, if you'll allow me a little bit of room for interpretation there. And so that inclusive leadership is understanding the dynamics of what it means to include everyone, and that requires recognizing differences in starting points. It requires recognizing differences in what we come to the office with. And again, it's in number 3 for a reason, because we have to be able to relate to multiple experiences, emotional intelligence, to be able to lead in a way that we can bring all people with us along that journey, so long as they are really in alignment, in heart alignment with where we're going. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, in order to lead, you have to have followers. And so how do you like creating followership again is dependent upon like you doing the work of getting clear on who you are and where you're going so that people can decide if they want to participate in that.
Yeah, and the inclusivity part of that is being able to, I mean, to me, it's really difficult to talk about inclusivity without talking about belonging. And to be able to create cultures of belonging it's ultimately, it's the safety in action, that anyone can come here and be wholly themselves and find a sense of belonging, because we just value the whole self that shows up, that we've already established this alignment with. So it's a, again, really, really important work, that of inclusivity and belonging needs to come. You've got to be capable of it before we can get to number 4, which is that purpose and values work.
Yeah, I love it. I get the inclusivity in a way that I hadn't when you first started. I mean, it's and I can see it's really cool the connection between all of these. It's work on self, work on others. So then, of course, I've got this mindset of engaging people to just be more of who they are. I mean, that's the inclusive part. For then being the bridge, the alignment, the shared purpose and values, so that when we're putting processes and systems in place, they feel real. They feel connected to what we stand for.
Absolutely correct. Again, something that you said just sparked something in me. And I think it's so important to talk about in inclusivity, because we have a tendency to build organizations biased towards things that look like us. And we don't do it on purpose. But we feel more comfortable in things that sound like us, look like us, whether that's in the churches we attend or the businesses that we build or our sports leagues or rec leagues, what the friendship groups that we have. That inclusivity allows us to open ourselves up to that not mattering, and that is a place that we have to go as human beings to be where we need to be. The way someone looks, the way they talk, where they're from, what their socioeconomic background is, whether or not we share the same level of education can't matter when we're building a business, because the diversity and experience that comes with being safe enough with yourself and safe enough with the communities that you build is like no other. It allows things to happen within your business that you are not capable of when you only build it with people just like yourself. I think it can kind of get lost there what that inclusive leadership means. To me, that's ultimately what it means. That has been untangled in you, that things need to look, feel, sound a certain way, and that you begin to have this just unbelievably bright and colorful tapestry of people in your organization that are allowing you to go places that otherwise you're incapable of going because you don't have the same experiences.
So good. I mean, through all of this, Andrea, you're dismantling what has been. What got us here will not get us there. And so, I mean, all of this, which is why your podcast is called Workplace Revolution, right? It really is revolution. So bring us home then. Talk about pillar 10. I have high expectations for pillar 10 because it is the last pillar. What are you leaving us with?
It's going to be a dud. It's still really important.
Well, then you need to change the name of it. It can't be a freaking dud. It's gotta be. You gotta
Not
go
like a
out with a
total,
bang.
not a total dud. Measure and mastery. And so
Eh,
when we're creating things like this,
kind of
especially
duddy.
when when you're when we're dismantling something, when we're creating a revolution, we can't just many revolutions have died on the vine because we forgot to ask people how it was going. This is not without ensuring that we are measuring for effectiveness at all stages. And some of that's built into the system design, right? So the systems thinking and organizational design needs to have points at which we are actually measuring factual data. What is the effectiveness of the work that we're doing? It's critically important. I'm not just talking about building, I'm not an HR person who lives in HR. I have a passion for businesses and I want them to thrive and be sustainable and be around for a really long time. So my passion actually comes from the business side of things. That measure for mastery is where we have the feedback loops, which are also multifaceted. It is data, it is facts, it is knowing what's going on inside the business. It's also listening to the people come back to tell us how it's going and allowing evolution. So in order to be sustainable, we have to be willing to go back and change the things that aren't working, examine them, talk about them, test them, move them, measure them, start the loop all over again.
Yeah. Continually, and it never ends. I love that many a revolution died on the vine because we didn't ask people how it was going. So just checking in. I love the work you're doing, and I'm so glad you're doing it.
Thank you, Andrea. That means a lot coming from you.
It is revolutionary. It's gonna be interesting too, like how you engage in this conversation with business leaders. Do business leaders, do they get it? Do you get a lot of like, "What?" Like, what's been your reaction as you've been talking about this?
Here, let's do it live because there you don't know this is coming. I don't know what you're going to say either, but I'm guessing. So knowing that we're in the world of a lot of friends, clients, business leaders, and so a question that is very natural to ask is, how are things going with the business? So typically, what's the answer? Like it from a
Revenue, quarterly revenue. Here's how we're tracking.
and what are, if they're willing to offer a frustration, which is sometimes rare, what is the frustration?
Oh gosh, supply chain, capacity, yeah, market challenges.
Okay. And maybe it's because of the nature of my work, but mine is a lot of times talent. We can't find people. We're having a hard time holding on to people. Or if I'm just in intimate conversation, frustrations with how people work, the predictability of people. So going back to your question of, how is it received? I observe over a long period of time that leaders just carry this tension around about the people, and we've just assumed that what it is. Like, I just have to live with this. It's a tension that I have to live with. There is no resolving this, and I just fundamentally disagree. It's just that we can't resolve it with what we consider to be fundamental business practices on the structures that that we know today. It is going to take a disruption. It is going to take looking at it differently, and it's not going to go away. People and businesses are not going to go away. Fun fact: not one single solitary business on the face of the earth is operating without people.
Yeah, and we need a revolution because clearly people are not happy. Like we want the workforce demands different. Like they want to have more ownership. They want to have more freedom. They want to belong. Yeah, they want community.
Yes. And it's not, and as a person who has operated from the get-go with, I really don't care what's worked or hasn't worked before. Here is my intention, and um, whether or not it feels attainable based on what we've experienced up until today is really irrelevant to me. I can see and feel that it is available and we can get there, but it's going to take a different approach.
Amen to that. Well, and I think about how you and I are running our businesses. And I've been, of course, as a business leader, I've been processing or I've been filtering all of this through my leadership. And I mean, I spend a ton of time thinking about the ripples I'm creating. I spend a ton of time like doing my work because I know the health of my relationships are dependent upon the health of the relationship I have with myself. Yeah, I mean, I see it playing out, and maybe it's because 'cause I'm a coach, maybe it's because of the work we do, I don't know, but this has been very affirming, and just know I'm rooting for you. We are in this together. I'm so grateful. Thank you, and it'll be fun to see the workplace revolution continuing to play out.
Well, and know that we hold it collaboratively, right? So this is it's a result of the work of the community. It's because you do lead the way that you lead, and we get to observe that. I have lessons that have come from you. I have lessons that have come from many people around me, from the leaders that you've impacted. And that is the beauty of the work. It's not mine. It's just, it's ours. And we get to go do it together and link arm in arm and watch the world change around us. And I love it.
Andrea, if our listeners want to connect with you, what is the best place to do that?
Best place to do that's going to be LinkedIn. And you'll have to forgive me because, unlike Andrea, I'm not a great user of LinkedIn, but I will pay better attention. That is the honest truth about my relationship with LinkedIn. You will find me. I will find you. But LinkedIn's a great place, obviously, for all of us to connect. And you can certainly reach out by email by finding those emails at either business website. ReadyHR is REDDEHR.com, and the Pabulum Group is PABULUM group.com. And would love to connect.
So lots of ways to find you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast to never miss a Being at Work story.